In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim's reign, one of the most impressive stories of the Bible begins. A young Jewish prince is taken from Jerusalem and brought as a prisoner to Babylon. But God had a greater plan. He transformed Daniel into the man who would interpret the most mysterious dreams of kings, survive a den of hungry lions, and receive visions revealing the fate of world empires until the end of times. Why are his prophecies so precise that they still leave skeptics speechless today? Come discover how the revelations given to Daniel are being fulfilled now, right before our eyes. Daniel and the Hebrew youths in Nebuchadnezzar's court. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. This dramatic event would forever change the destiny of the Jewish people. The walls of the holy city, which had long protected the chosen people, could not withstand the power of the Babylonian Empire. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the house of God. Among the treasures taken to Babylon were not only the sacred vessels of the temple, but also something even more precious, the young nobles of Judah. And the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his officials, to bring some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. The king sought young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. Among these chosen ones were 4 who would stand out. Among them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah from Judah. These young Hebrews were immediately immersed in a program of acculturation. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar; to Hananiah, Shadrach; to Mishael, Meshach; and to Azariah, Abednego. The king assigned them a daily portion of the king's delicacies and the wine he drank. But here arose the first test of faith. Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the king's food or with the wine he drank. With wisdom, he asked the chief of the officials for permission not to defile himself. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. Still, the official was afraid. "I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age?" Daniel then proposed a test. "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food." The result was extraordinary. At the end of the 10 days, their appearance was better and healthier than all the young men who ate the royal food. Throughout their 3 years of training, God gave these 4 young men knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the period, when the king spoke with them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. This was not only a testament to the intellectual superiority of these youths, but a demonstration of the power and faithfulness of the God of Israel, the dream of the great statue. In the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he had dreams. His mind was troubled and he could not sleep. This was no ordinary dream. It was a divine revelation that would change the course of history and reveal the future of nations. The king was so troubled that he summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. But there was an extraordinary detail in this request. The king not only wanted the interpretation, but demanded that they tell him what the dream was. He said, "I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." The wise men answered, "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." The king's response was terrifying. "If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble." The wise men protested, "There is no one on earth who can do what the king asks." Furious with this answer, the king was so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. This decree included Daniel and his companions, who were not even present at this audience. When Daniel learned of the situation, he went in and asked the king to give him time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, to urge them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision at night. His first reaction was one of praise. Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. When Daniel was brought before the king, he declared, "The mystery the king has asked about, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." Then Daniel revealed the dream. "Your Majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The statue had a specific composition. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay." Daniel then explained the meaning. "Your Majesty, you are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. The head of gold represented the Babylonian Empire. After you, another kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. The chest and arms of silver represented the Medo-Persian Empire. A third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. The Greek Empire of Alexander the Great. The fourth kingdom will be as strong as iron, the Roman Empire. The feet, partly of iron and partly of clay, represented the division and fragility of this final kingdom. But the most astonishing part of the vision was yet to come. A rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. This rock became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. It represented the kingdom of God that would be established and would never be destroyed. Incredible how God revealed the future of nations through a dream, isn't it? Tell me in the comments, what part of this prophecy impressed you the most? And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to know these truths. Nebuchadnezzar's reaction was remarkable. He fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king declared, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries." As a result, the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. This extraordinary prophecy remains relevant today as it shows us the sovereign control of God over human history. While earthly kingdoms rise and fall, the kingdom of God endures forever. The fiery furnace. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. This monumental statue, approximately 27 meters tall, was a symbol of the king's pride and power. Then King Nebuchadnezzar summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials. The purpose was clear. Everyone must fall down and worship the image when they hear the sound of musical instruments. The decree was severe. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. It was an absolute display of power and an attempt to unify the empire through worship. Some Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. They reminded the king, "There are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." Furious, Nebuchadnezzar summoned the 3 young men. "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up?" Their response is one of the greatest testimonies of faith recorded in the Bible. O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. This response enraged the king even more, and he ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The fire was so intense that it killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The 3 young men were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. But then something extraordinary happened. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose in haste. He spoke to his counselors, saying, "Didn't we throw 3 men bound into the fire?" They answered, "True, O king." He responded, "Look, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, unharmed, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." The king then called the young men, "Servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." The miracle was evident to all, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. The transformation in Nebuchadnezzar was immediate. Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him. The king then made a new decree. "Therefore I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way." This powerful story teaches us about faithfulness in the midst of trials. The 3 young men did not know if they would be physically saved, but they were determined to remain faithful to God, regardless of the consequences. Their testimony changed the heart of a pagan king and continues to inspire believers today. As it is written in Isaiah 43:2, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." The dream of the great tree. King Nebuchadnezzar, to the nations and peoples of every language who live in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. This chapter is unique because it is narrated by Nebuchadnezzar himself, who begins by sharing his testimony. "I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. I had a dream that made me afraid. As I was lying in bed, the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. So I commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be brought before me. But once again, only Daniel could help him. The dream was impressive. I looked, and there before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous. The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it, the wild animals found shelter, and the birds lived in its branches. From it every creature was fed, but then came the judgment. I looked, and there before me was a holy messenger coming down from heaven. He called in a loud voice, "Cut down the tree and trim off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches, but let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground, in the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth." The divine decree continued, "Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal till 7 times pass by for him." Daniel, hearing the dream, was greatly perplexed for a time, and his thoughts terrified him. The prophet then explained the meaning. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, with its top touching the sky, visible to the whole earth, you, your majesty, are that tree. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to distant parts of the earth. Incredible how God uses dreams to speak even to pagan kings, isn't it? Share in the comments. Have you ever received a warning from God that changed your life? Daniel then revealed the imminent judgment. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. The prophet advised the king, "Therefore, your majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue." 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. After 7 years, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. The king's final testimony is powerful. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. This story teaches us about the danger of pride and the importance of humility before God. As it is written in Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. The Feast of Belshazzar. King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. This feast would be the last night of the Babylonian Empire, although Belshazzar did not know it. During the banquet, Belshazzar committed an act of deep profanation. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. At that moment, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand, in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. The king's reaction was immediate. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. Desperate, the king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He promised that whoever could interpret the writing would be clothed in purple, have a gold chain placed around their neck, and be made the 3rd highest ruler in the kingdom. But all the king's wise men could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. Then the queen remembered Daniel. "There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom." When Daniel arrived, the king offered him the same rewards. But the prophet replied, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means." Before interpreting the writing, Daniel reminded the king of Nebuchadnezzar's story. "The Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Then he rebuked Belshazzar. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. Finally, Daniel interpreted the mysterious writing on the wall. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The prophecy was fulfilled immediately. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. This dramatic story teaches us several important lessons. The danger of arrogance, divine judgment on sin, and how God remains sovereign over the kingdoms of men. As it is written in Proverbs 14:34, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin condemns any people. Belshazzar's feast also shows us how downfall can come suddenly for those who despise divine warnings. In one night, the greatest empire of the ancient world fell, fulfilling prophecies made long before. Daniel in the lion's den. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. This favoritism generated envy. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." The officials devised a cunning plan. So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. King Darius, without realizing the trap, put the decree in writing. Daniel's reaction was remarkable. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. The conspirators quickly denounced Daniel. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king was deeply troubled. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. But the law of the Medes and Persians could not be repealed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles. The king spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice. Daniel's response was a powerful testimony. "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Divine justice was manifested. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them. The result was a new decree from King Darius. "I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. This powerful story teaches us about faithfulness in the midst of persecution and God's sovereignty in protecting his servants. As it is written in Psalm 34:7, the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. The vision of the four beasts. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was lying in bed. This chapter marks an important shift in the book of Daniel, moving from historical narratives to prophetic visions. Daniel describes his vision. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. Four great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first beast. The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. This represented Babylon, the second beast, and there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. This symbolized the Medo-Persian Empire, the third beast. After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads. This represented the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great. The fourth beast was the most terrifying. After that, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. Then Daniel saw something even more extraordinary. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. In the climax of the vision, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. The interpretation was given. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth. But the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever. About the 4th beast. The 4th beast is a 4th kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. This prophetic vision reveals God's plan through human history, culminating in the establishment of Christ's eternal kingdom. As it is written in Revelation 11:15, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Messiah, and he will reign forever and ever. The vision of the ram and the goat. In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, I, Daniel, had a vision, after the one that had already appeared to me. This vision occurred in Susa, the capital of Persia. Daniel saw a ram standing beside the canal. It had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were long, but one was longer than the other, and the longer one grew up last. The ram charged toward the west and the north and the south. No animal could stand against it, and none could rescue from its power. Suddenly, a goat with a prominent horn between its eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching the ground. This goat attacked the ram furiously, striking it and shattering its 2 horns. The goat knocked it to the ground and trampled on it. The goat became very great, but at the height of its power, the large horn was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Daniel's prophecies are incredibly precise, aren't they? The interpretation was given by the angel Gabriel. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia, but the shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between its eyes is the first king. This first king was Alexander the Great. The horn being broken and 4 others arising in its place means that 4 kingdoms will emerge from his nation, but not with his power. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among 4 generals. The vision also speaks of a small horn that grows up to oppose the army of heaven, throwing some of the starry host down to the earth and trampling on them. This would be a ruler who would oppose God's people. The impact of this vision was so great that I, Daniel, was worn out. I lay exhausted for several days. The precision of this prophecy is remarkable, as it accurately foresaw the rise of the Greek Empire and its subsequent division. As it is written in Amos 3:7, "Surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets." The prophecy of the 70 weeks, in the first year of Darius son of Xerxes, a Mede by descent, who was made ruler over the Babylonian kingdom. Daniel was studying the prophecies of Jeremiah about the 70 years of captivity. So I turned to the Lord God and pleaded with him in prayer and petition, in fasting and in sackcloth and ashes. Daniel's prayer is one of the most beautiful examples of intercession in the Bible. He confessed the sins of his people. "We have sinned and done wrong. We have been wicked and have rebelled. We have turned away from your commands and laws." While I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. Gabriel revealed the famous prophecy of the 70 weeks. 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. The prophecy is divided into 3 parts. Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. After the 62 sevens, the Anointed One will be put to death and will have nothing. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. This extraordinary chronological prophecy pointed precisely to the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, as it is written in Galatians 4:4, "But when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son." The precision of this prophecy demonstrates God's sovereign control over history and his perfect plan of redemption through Jesus Christ. Gabriel concluded by telling Daniel that this prophecy was sealed until the time of the end, indicating that its full understanding would be progressively revealed, as it is written in 1 Peter 1:10-11. "Concerning this salvation, the prophets who spoke of the grace that was to come to you searched intently and with the greatest care, trying to find out the time and circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing, the vision of the man in linen." In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. Its message was true, and it concerned a great war. Daniel was in mourning and spiritual seeking. In those days, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. On the 24th day of the 1st month, I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris. It was then that he had an extraordinary vision. I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. The description of this celestial figure is impressive. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. The impact of the vision was overwhelming. I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. Those who were with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. Daniel was deeply affected. So I was left, alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left, my face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. A celestial being strengthened him. "Do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard." A spiritual conflict was revealed. The prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. The messenger explained, "Now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go, the prince of Greece will come." This vision reveals important spiritual realities, showing that invisible battles are happening behind earthly events. As it is written in Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world." The prophecy of the kings of the north and south. "And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him." This chapter contains one of the most detailed prophecies of the Bible. The angel began revealing, "Now then, I tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th, who will be far richer than all the others. When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will arise, who will rule with great power and do as he pleases." This was Alexander the Great, but after he has arisen, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven. The prophecy then details conflicts between the king of the south, Egypt, and the king of the north, Syria. The king of the south will become strong, but one of his commanders will become even stronger than he and will rule his own kingdom with great power. The prophecy describes political alliances. After some years, they will become allies. A daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance. A contemptible person will arise in his place to whom royal honor has not been given. He will invade the kingdom when its people feel secure, and he will seize it through intrigue. He will return to his own country with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. This king will desecrate the temple, setting up the abomination that causes desolation. But the people who know their God will resist him and will do great exploits. As it is written in Psalm 33:10-11, "The Lord foils the plans of the nations, he thwarts the purposes of the peoples. But the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart through all generations." The prophecy culminates with events of the end times. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. This final prophecy reveals dramatic events of the end times. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. The destiny of the righteous is glorious. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness, like the stars forever and ever. Daniel received a specific command. "But you, Daniel, roll up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge." What impressive revelations about the end times. Share in the comments. How does this message impact your life today? Give it a like and help others know these truths. Daniel saw 2 others standing, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. One of them asked, "How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?" The answer was mysterious. "It will be for a time, times, and half a time. When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed." Daniel, confused, asked, "My Lord, what will the outcome of all this be?" The answer was, "Go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the time of the end. A special promise is given. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1335 days." The final message to Daniel was, "As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance." We have reached the end of this incredible journey through the book of Daniel. If this content blessed your life, share it with others. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more in-depth biblical studies like this. Until the next video, as it is written in 1 Thessalonians 5:2-5, "But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are all children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness." The book of Daniel teaches us that God is sovereign over history, faithful to those who serve him, and that his kingdom will ultimately triumph. As Christians, we can face the future with confidence, knowing that the God who revealed these mysteries to Daniel continues in control today.